Yes, in 1997, I was on the Ricki show, and unfortunately, I don't possess the video no more. I came home one evening, and there was this guy that I recognized from some of the talk shows. He would do the sexy man in uniform, buff guy thing with a bunch of other guys on like the Richard Bay show and whatever, all that silly stuff. And he was the boyfriend of my sister's friend's mother. I think I got that. You got that? Okay. And I'm like, hey, he's like, hey, you have a face for TV. Here's my card. He was like the owner of talk show models that would provide the buff guys and whatnot for the talk shows. So a little time goes by, and I actually got a call to do a show, and I didn't have a cell phone at the time, and I think I may have had a beeper, but I didn't have enough time to get to the phone to make the call. I was actually out, had been at my psychiatrist, yes, and I missed it. It happened to be Men Who Love Big-Breasted Women or something like that. Anyhow, so the next shot came up, and I had to call up and tell them who I was and explain the whole thing. I was being hired as like an actor. Some people don't realize that that happens sometimes, obviously, for the models and stuff, but for little skits and whatnot, they hire people. And I talked to the producer, and she's like, well, I don't know if we can pay you. And I'm like, well, I don't think I can do this if I don't get paid. And she goes, well, I'll see. Are you buff? Are you buff? I'm like, yeah, I'm buff. Well, are you sure? Are you buff? I'm like, yeah, yeah. And so she's like, all right, I'll get back to you. I'll see if we can pay you. And then she gets back, and they're like, okay, yeah, we can pay you. Okay. I was going to go to the taping with my sister. Unfortunately, she had to be hospitalized. And so I went, and I was really nervous. I was dealing with depression and panic attacks, anxiety. And so I was like, I'm going to do this, and wow, I hope I don't freak out. So as I was going through the security, in my bag I had my sedatives, and I was like, oh yeah, those are because he's like, oh yeah, it's cool, my wife has whatever. And so they shoot a bunch of shows like in a day. So there was the backstage area, green room, whatever you want to call it, with a bunch of different characters and things and stuff. And I got to meet the guys that were going to be involved in my segment. It turns out some guy wrote into the show. He had seen a girl from another episode. His name was Rico, and he was really into this chick. He was like, oh wow, I gotta meet her. But I guess they figured, you know what, his name's Rico, but he doesn't look like a Rico. Let's make this kind of an interesting scenario. So we'll get a couple other guys that look like Ricos, and we'll try to see who she wants, who she thinks it is, who the audience thinks it is. And yeah, so we did a little run through before the audience came. It's like, okay, give it a try, see what you're gonna do. And I went down to a knee, and I took her hand, and whatever. And actually, was she there in the rehearsal? She might have been. I can't remember. It was really kind of a blur. But obviously, when I really did it, she was there, crowd was there, and the whole thing. Lights, camera, action. In any case, we did a little run through, and I got the okay for what I was gonna do from like the producer. It's like, yeah, that'll work. Okay. So it was time. All right, ready. It was like an out-of-body experience. It's like walking out there. At the time, I was competing, so I was used to walking out in front of people, you know, a crowd. But this was a lot brighter, and I was actually clothed, and I had to speak. So I did the get down onto one knee, took her hand, and I was like, I'm Rico, and I really want to be with you, or something like that. And everyone was like, oh, and clapping, and she's like, oh, and give the hug and the kiss. And so the audience had to decide who the real Rico was. And then she also had to decide who she thought the real Rico was. And then who it actually was, she had to decide if she actually wanted to like see him or not. It's wacky. Anyway, the crowd, to my recollection, thought it was me, and she actually thought it was me too. But it turned out, obviously, it wasn't me. It was the guy who, he was like a white guy with sort of like a mullety kind of hairdo with a real thin mustache, tall, nice, kind of goofy. He was the real letter writer. So it was like, the real Rico stepped forward, and we were like, and it was like, oh, hey. And it's like, well, you can either go out with him, the real Rico, or, you know, the other guys. And she's like, I'll go out with him. Yeah, she didn't want to embarrass him. But later on, after we were all done, she was like, I believe it was like out on the street outside the studio, she was like, you know, I wanted it to be you here. And she gave me her number. I might have called her like once or twice. We never went out or anything like that. And then a bunch of us went over to the McDonald's and kind of hung out and talked about this and that and whatever, and that was about it. The first check paid for the Sam. It was about like $250, and then when it aired again, a little less. I think it aired like 4 or 5 times. And that's the story, the best I can remember. I have a very good memory, but it was such a overwhelming kind of situation. But if any of you know someone that worked in her production company or whatever, or on the show, if you can get your hands on the video, whatever, please do so. Let me know, because it like disappeared. Believe me, it actually did happen. Hope you enjoyed. Later.